feels like we need a good algorithm for actually doing that sorting. So how can we go about doing that?
So one of my favorite things to do in lecture each year is to actually have these upcoming demos where we invite some 8 students up on stage and actually enact various sorting algorithms. And I'll admit, I've actually struggled with how best to do this because my instincts always are to just invite the audience to start telling us what to do, how to sort yourselves. But it never leads necessarily to the best pedagogy, to be honest, or the best narrative, the best order of operations, because sometimes we sort of organically end up with selection sort or insertion sort or bubble sort or something else altogether. And then I have to sort of wrestle with, all right, how do I rein this in and try to clean it up a bit? And so on other years, like I have very deliberately advised students on how to sort themselves. And I've said, all right, what if you go here and then you go here? And that's kind of given a better result in terms of the flow that I want. But it's a tension, I feel, honestly.
Yeah, it can be tricky to have to open things up like this. And this is actually something we saw at the very beginning of the course when we were learning about how the English language can actually be really bad for trying to explain what to do. We can sort of run into these situations where we are unintentionally imprecise with our language. And I feel like when we take the time to, we do script this a little bit more, and we do force students to do things in a particular way. It allows us to speak much more precisely about the way algorithms work. And because algorithms are step-by-step sets of instructions that are very precise, they don't work if you have imprecision. And so,
and I would try it both ways, honestly, and try it both ways in a class, maybe alternating years or different classes of students, and see just which one works best. I will say, using music stands or some equivalent, it was kind of an innovation or an improvement at some point. We discovered we had access to like 8 music stands because the algorithms that require shifting, so like insertion sort, for instance, where you want to shift a lot of the students, it's harder to see the expense of that unless there are these preordained positions that the students have to stay in.
And you have to like physically lift this device and do this extra work. It makes it much more clear.
Or even just the piece of paper, like the music stands can stay. But just noticing that these are now like 8 spots that are finite in number but fixed in location, you see the students more deliberately incurring the cost of moving. Whereas in past, people would very politely just kind of make room for someone, and it's hard to formalize like what was that expense when you just made room for someone right there.
Yeah, I think showing these, this is definitely an example where having an in-person demo is really high value. I think it's worth taking the time in class to spend even maybe a full class period or 2 class periods just doing this and showing these examples off, because it's really high impact, I think.
And I will say, this is just a historical accident that the even numbers are on the left and the odd numbers on the right. I'm not quite sure how that came to pass, but I've been using the same numbers for historical sake, history's sake, again and again. But that probably adds a bit of undue curiosity that we should probably eliminate next year, honestly, because there is no reason for that.
Actually, I think not too long ago we had a situation where we were using these numbers for merge sort, and we inadvertently created a situation where things were already merged.
That was
as a result
not
of that.
A very enlightening day. But those 3 algorithms are very deliberately chosen. Bubble sort, I love the simplicity of it, right? And the iterative approach to solving the problem. It's getting better and better and better and better and better and better, and it's taking a while to get there, but you can see the improvement with each of those swaps. Selection source is nice because it's just so darn simple.
Right.
Like, just go get me the next smallest element, bring it here, bring it here, bring it here. Like, there's a nice repetition to that that's very accessible. Insertion sort, I personally tend to do third among these 3 because it requires a little bit more thought. There's a little more cleverness in that you're going from left to right, dealing with each element in turn, but then like solving the problem by shifting people as needed.
Yeah, it looks fundamentally different because it's, when you reduce these to code or pseudocode, it's the only one that doesn't really involve iterating over the array multiple times, but at the expense of this really sometimes painful, if you have to make a big shift,
Indeed.
sorting of people. I personally, when I'm teaching it in section, I start with bubble, and then I do selection, and then I do
that's pretty much the ordering I use, unless things I let things get out of my control and just invite students to propose algorithms, which I then try to slap a label on if it does map to something that's traditionally known or used in a class. But what we're avoiding here, notice, is like merge sort comes later. Right? We're not going to aspire to something that's subquadratic until, or like n log n, until we're ready to get to that point. But what is nice about selection, bubble, and insertion 2 is that it lets us start to hint at opportunities for optimization, like with bubble sort. You don't have to just like blindly go through again and again n times over n elements. You can actually short circuit that if you notice, wait a minute, I didn't do any swaps. Let me stop then. So even though we don't slap the asymptotic notation on the discussion just yet, there's like an opportunity there.
To just see it.
Exactly.